Welcome to class, students. Today we'll be looking at a very vital topic titled Major Schools of Political Thought. Different schools of political philosophy offer diverse interpretation of these fundamental concepts, guided by varying values and proposing distinct framework for organizing societies, while the liberalism, the conservatism, the socialism, and the anarchism. Liberalism emphasizes individual rights, personal freedom, legal protection, and tolerance, viewing government's primary role as protecting these values. The conservatism focuses on preserving traditional institutions and practices, expressing skepticism about radical social reform. The socialism advocates for collective ownership and equitable distribution of resources to address social inequalities. The anarchism rejects centralized governmental authority entirely, promoting stateless social organization. Major school of thought, we have the anarchism. Perel, Perel Joseph, Perel Joseph Proudhon was a founding figure of anarchism and saw state authority as an obstacle of equality and liberty. Foundational principles and core values of anarchism. Anarchism stands as a distinctive school of political thought that fundamentally opposes hierarchical system of governance, advocating instead for self-governing social structure and the complete elimination of the state, a condition known as anarchy. Joseph Proudhon, one of the anarchism founding figures, viewed state authority as a fundamental obstacle to achieving genuine equality and liberty. Anarchists typically embrace liberty and equality as their primary guiding values, viewing these principles as inseparable and mutually reinforcing. They perceive authority exercised by some individuals over others as an inherent threat to individual autonomy and self-determination. From this perspective, hierarchical structure perpetuates power imbalances and social inequalities, making them incompatible with human flourishing. Consequently, anarchists challenge the fundamental legitimacy of centralized government that wield coercive power over population. They maintain that freedom from domination represents a central requirement for human flourishing and advocate for social structures built upon voluntary association to advance universal egalitarianism. Varieties of anarchist thought. The anarchist tradition encompasses several distinct schools of thought, each offering different approaches to the critique of state power and the organization of stateless society. While the absolute anarchism, the contingent anarchism, the individualistic anarchism, and the collectivist or socialist anarchism. The conservatism, Edmund Burke was an early defender of conservatism, stressing the importance of the accumulated wisdom of past generations and the danger of radical change. Conservatism represents a political philosophy fundamentally rooted in the preservation and advancement of established institutions, customs and practices that have developed over time. This ideological framework emerged prominently through the work of Edmund Burke, who championed the accumulated wisdom embedded in generational experience while warning against the perils of sudden sweeping societal transformation. Core philosophical foundation. At its essence, conservatism operates from a position of epistemic humility, a deep skepticism regarding humanity's capacity to completely reimagine and restructure society through rational planning alone. Conservative thinkers argue that human understanding of complex societal systems remains inherently limited, making radical attempts to societal reform prone to unintended consequences that frequently cause more damage than the problems they seek to address. This perspective elevates experiential knowledge gained through historical processes above the theoretical construct derived purely from abstract reasoning. The conservative worldview treats long-standing institutions and cultural practices as repositories of collective wisdom that have proven their worth through sustained existence across generations. These established systems are viewed not as arbitrary arrangements but as evolved solutions to enduring human challenges, having survived because they successfully address fundamental social needs while maintaining stability and continuity. Variety of conservative thought. We have the traditionalist conservatism, romantic or reactionary conservatism, paternalistic conservatism, and liberal conservatism. The founder of liberalism, John Locke, prioritized individual freedom over state power. Liberalism stands as one of the most influential and enduring philosophical traditions in modern political thought, fundamentally centered on the primacy of individual liberty, human rights, legal equality, and democratic governance. This multifaceted ideology encompasses a broad spectrum of ideas and interpretations that have evolved significantly since its emergence during the Enlightenment period, making it difficult to encapsulate within a single precise definition. Fundamental philosophical principles. The liberal tradition draws heavily from Enlightenment thinkers, particularly John Locke's revolutionary concept that all human beings are born inherently free and equally possessing natural rights that precede any governmental authority. This foundational premise established the state's primary function as protecting and preserving this natural condition of human freedom rather than creating or granting rights. However, liberal thought also encompasses alternative perspectives that emphasizes democratic participation and civic engagement as equally fundamental to individual liberty, viewing political involvement as essential to human flourishing rather than merely focusing on pre-political natural equality. Socialism. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels developed a radical form of socialism calling for communist revolution to overcome capitalism. Socialism represents a diverse family of political and economic philosophy united by their fundamental emphasis on collective ownership of productive resources and equitable distribution of society basic goods and services. This ideological framework stands in direct opposition to systems based on private ownership of the means of production, arguing instead urging instead that productive assets should belong to a society as a whole, with particular emphasis on workers' control and democratic management of economic resources. The foundational principle and philosophical underpinning of socialism. The socialist worldview conceptualizes the state as a neutral arbiter of or minimal protector of individual rights, but as a sophisticated administrative apparatus designed to coordinate resource allocation, manage production processes, and ensure comprehensive social welfare. This perspective envisions government as an active instrument for achieving social justice through deliberate organization of economic activity rather than rely on market mechanism or private initiative. Central to this sociologist thought is the pursuit of equality, which socialists view as a natural and desirable condition of human society. This commitment extends beyond formal legal equality to encompass substantive economic and social equality, addressing disparities in wealth, power, and opportunity that socialists argue are artificially created and maintained by capitalist systems. Realism is closely associated with Nico emphasis on power, self-interest, and pragmatic governance. Realism versus idealism, two fundamentally opposing paradigms, have shaped political analysis since the emergence of systematic political thought. Realism, deeply influenced by Niccolo pragmatic approach to governance, operates from the premises that political behavior is fundamentally driven by selfishness and the pursuit of power. This perspective views political actors, whether individuals, groups, or states, as primarily motivated by the desire to expand their influence and control over resources, territory, and other actors. Realist analysis emphasize the deployment of both soft power, influence through cultural diplomacy and economic incentive, and hard power, that is military force and economic coercion, as legitimate tools for achieving political objectives. Crucially, realism rejects moral constraints as inappropriate limitation on political action, arguing that the collision of competing power aspiration naturally leads to conflict that must be resolved through superior force or strategic manoeuvre rather than ethical deliberation. The realist worldview prioritizes concrete practical consideration over abstract principle, viewing successful political action as that which effectively shapes historical reality according to actors' interests rather than conforming to idealist moral standard. The idealism presents a diametrically opposed framework, asserting that political action should be guided by universal moral principles rather than narrow self-interest. Idealist approaches seek to establish just and equitable social agreement based on ethical norms that transcend political culture or historical context. Idealists acknowledge that their visions may appear utopian when measured against current political realities, but they maintain that political action should aspire to transform existing conditions rather than merely work within them. This approach treats moral principles as constraining factors that limit acceptable political strategies while providing ultimate justification for political authority and social organization. Thank you for listening.